Good morning.
Hey,
Hey,
good morning.
Anand. Hey, man. We're gone. Bergen.
Hi,
Hey,
Lee, how are you?
good. Good. I am, yeah. Well, shoot. I'm in need of coming up with new jokes because I was about to make a joke about Red Bull and some other things. But Red Bull at 10 a.m. It's
Oh,
it's quite the rock star lifestyle I've got.
perfect.
It's Nerd Shirt Friday, by the way. Um, and so mine is Cisco. Um, I'm still trying to figure out how to ensure that everyone can join this call without having to ask to be admitted. I think the trick is that if people are signed in using the same email address that they were invited to the call with, I think they're good to go. So for those that have to be allowed into the call, maybe we know that they've got more than one email address, I guess. What just happened? Just changed my layout. Layout, tiled, very good. Okay, Harshini, good. Look at this too. We're only 3 after, and people are joining on time. I'm not sure what's going on. This is, well, hold on. Oh, yeah. It's Friday the 13th. Okay. I knew there's something a bit weird. Nice. All right. While we're giving people 2 more minutes, I'll grab the meeting minutes link. Everybody should have access. If you don't, I'm putting it into the chat here, but if you don't, make sure you just request access. Jump into the meeting minutes. Please, everyone, take notes or things that you think are interesting, put in there. I'll do what I can to keep notes as we go, but everyone knows I've got enough of a challenge doing one thing at a time, much less 2. So, all right, 4 after. We've got Nuno with us. Nuno, I assume you're joining us from vacation because I'm not really sure what else you do other than go on vacation.
What? That's not true. Hi, everyone. No, I was in vacation 2 weeks in a row. That's true. And now I'm back at work. And that's why I don't have a camera, actually. And then I will have a train, of course, as usual. But I'm here for the good stuff. And I will start, like I promised them, finally, I will start working on the Porter CNAP build potentially next week already. I just wanted to know if I understood correctly. Now we should use Meshery CTL, but that's live or?
Oh, actually, I think Anand had the answer is this close to being yes. I think the reason why that's not necessarily true is Anand is working through a bug that I think. I mean, actually, Nuno, it would be helpful if you gave it a shot. It will absolutely. We will absolutely do so. So actually, I guess this is a great question. I mean, let's kind of start the call, or let me share the meeting minutes because I think this is a good note to take.
Yeah, no, but I mean, I can use the way I was using with Docker anyway, the way I've been using it, and I can try to porterize it like that. It's just that I will need to check Porter and the dependencies because they have been fully rewritten, and actually the Porter team, Caroline and Jeremy, are also, let's say, waiting on some feedback from my usage. And so if I can just already go with the even if it's buggy, I would say it's kind of okay-ish if I can just at least start Meshery, right?
Right.
So if I can start it, then I can already bundle it, and then the bugs will just, let's say, be the moment they are fixed. For me, it's like pulling container anyway and just updating it, so it will be okay.
Okay. So it is true. I am able to only do one thing at a time. So if anybody else wants to add these notes as we're going, please do. The Yeah, I think you got it right. That the North Star here is for Meshery CTL to be the CLI, and that Meshery, the Bash script, would over time be unmaintained and more or less be removed from the repository. Um, Meshery CTL is now being automatically built and released. But since we had not had it front and center the last few weeks, some of the changes that we've done, I think, are going to be a blocking issue for you right now. And Anand, actually, if you have that issue number handy, feel free to bring it up. That's the you'll if you go to run. So Nuno, I would be interesting if it would be interesting to understand if you can reproduce this issue. Right now, what happens is if you use Meshery CTL, for me, I'm running on a Mac, and it'll tell me that, and I've got Docker Desktop installed,
Right.
but as Meshery CTL does a pre-flight check, so to speak, a prerequisite check, it checks for the presence of Docker Compose.
Sure.
But for whatever reason, it's got that logic a bit off. So even though I have Docker Compose, it's telling me that I don't. So Anand, I don't know if you've had time to look into this or have an update on this.
Actually, I saw the code and it was a bit off. I think Sako designed it as that the bin file of the Docker Compose is stored in I think USR shared bin. So if it's not present there, then it will show the Docker Compose is off or it's not present, and it will try to download. So I have to go through the init process again and check through what's wrong with it.
That's a good.
Actually, I'm trying on my desktop and it's working fine. And I don't have a Mac user around me, so that I can check it on the Mac machine. So it's pretty good.
Okay.
I tried the
So this is a good question, maybe for the community. As Meshery CTL goes to start Meshery, when it starts Meshery, it will use Docker Compose, because Meshery, or it sometimes will use Docker Compose if you're running it locally, if you're running Meshery locally, because Meshery will spin up as a collection of containers using Docker Compose. And so Meshery CTL checks for Docker Compose to be available. Do people have a suggestion about best practices in terms of checking for the presence of Docker Compose? I start to think about something like which Docker Compose. I think right now the code inside of Meshery CTL checks for the presence of a file in a certain location, which may or may not be the same location across different operating systems. Anybody got any suggestions?
Okay, I'm not a developer here, so I'm just guessing from a user point of view what I will do if I don't know what. I will just run Docker Compose maybe version, and if the output is different than the version, or if the output is an error, I guess you can get that, right? If it's error, then it means that Docker Compose is not available, or at least is not on the path. So, and that would actually work directly for Linux, Mac, and of course Windows. in the future.
Yeah.
Instead of doing because which might be buggy then, or you might find another way running it on Windows if you want to do at some point in time.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It's funny. I would argue that you've given the best suggestion of the ones that I had said for a couple of reasons. Yep, the utility which may or may not be available on your system. The checking for a given specific location varies from system to system. Even if which returns with yes, there's Docker Compose is here, that doesn't necessarily guarantee you that Docker Compose is in fact fully installed and functional. So yeah, your suggestion of, hey, just run the thing or give it a small command, and if it comes back with a response, then that's about as good as you can get. So anybody else?
And yeah, sorry, just to add one more point maybe is also in terms of Meshery and compliance. Sorry, I come from pharma, of course, so we can guarantee that at least version X is installed also, because maybe someone has a Docker Compose that is like since ever, I don't know, and maybe we are trying to use a Docker Compose feature. So if the Docker Compose version is not at least X, then we ensure that we will install the newest.
Nice. I'm taking dictation from you at this point. This is great. Anybody have any other thoughts on the approach there?
I think checking on version, as Nino said, that we should check or run a command, small command. If it's come with a response, then it's installed. But checking for a particular version, I think that's kind of
Yeah, it may. Yep,
makes sense.
yeah, so this is maybe a good introduction for some who may or may not be familiar. But there's Meshery, the Meshery documentation site. It's here. I'll put the link into our chat, or if anybody else wants to. I think. Okay, very good. We do have, by the way, Gunjan and Ashish are both on the call. Awesome. I think both of them have got a fair bit of noise around them, so they're being kind and muting. But Gunjan and Ashish, very pleased to have you. I think this is the first time you've been on the community call, so good, good, good. Funny, first time for Gunjan and Ashish to be on the community call, but they've already been landing PRs and already been contributing, so it was very good, very pleased. I popped over the URL to the Meshery documentation. Now that I land on the page, I'm going to toss up a challenge for someone to figure out a better video or a better intro to Meshery that doesn't include my face. we do not need to have my face here per se. I think at the time we just didn't have anything better to put up. So that's kind of a sad state. But the point of bringing up Meshery documentation is I think one of the points that Nuno and Anand were making about checking, confirming compatibility. There is in the documentation today something of a, there it was actually. If you go to installation, there is a platform compatibility table that I think maybe Sako had originally worked on, and what it really, I think right now speaks to is compatibility of platforms, if you will. And one of those quote unquote platforms is Docker Desktop. And so to Nuno's point, Anand, it may be worthwhile to, while you're executing that prerequisite check for Docker Compose, if we're running a simple command like version, and if it turns out to be below 2.x, that could be an issue for us. I don't know that I've personally tested on something lower than 2.x. And so we either would want to go about the business of actually testing to confirm that we're okay running all the way back there. That would mean you'd have to have an environment that does that. You could run the test, or you could, in this case, just simply put out a warning that says, that tells the user they're running this version, and that for best experience with Meshery, they would want to upgrade.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. And actually, Nuno, what's funny, man, I hear you occasionally say like, well, hey, just I'm going to caveat this with, I'm not a software engineer, but and then you'll give some good advice. The funny thing is, this type of a solution is actually best suited for a systems administrator, an operator, someone who, because that's the right answer. You're trying to guarantee compatibility across operating systems, trying to guarantee that the thing is functional in there, and so yeah.
Yeah, the form got on me. Sorry for that. we need to just to always ensure that everything is reproducible and with a certain version. So I don't develop indeed, but at the end of the day, maybe the logic keeps the same.
Yeah, nice. The only thing I think I'm disappointed with this morning, Nuno, is that your GitHub handle is not Darth Nunix, because that would be funny.
No, I wanted Nunix, but like there's a couple like Nunix Tech on Twitter and Darth Nunix indeed, and in Gmail. But yeah, the Nunix is there. It's okay. It's the same.
Nice. Okay. Okay, very good. Well, yep. So to wrap up that conversation, I think, yeah, Meshery CTL is being built and is available. Nuno, it would be good for you to verify that whether or not you bump into this same issue or if this is a Docker desktop issue. And
yeah, we'll do. And it will be on WSL, it.
Oh yeah, very good, very good. And I think Anand, just to repeat what you had said, you're not seeing the issue because the current check for presence of Docker Compose looks for it in a certain path, under a certain path, which was a Linux-based path, or okay, yeah. So, all right. Okay, very good. Well, we've got so there's a bunch of folks on the call today. Make sure that each of you have gone in and put your names down in the community meeting minutes. If you can't do it because you're traveling or what have you, just come back after or send speak up and we'll put you down. I don't want to talk more than I should today, but I do think that there's a number of exciting things that have happened since last we were together, and I got to tell you about them. So first, there is another student at UEM Jaipur, Rohit Agarwal, that I think some of you are familiar with. He's joined the community and I think has set a record in terms of being the quickest to join, have a conversation, and start landing PRs. So impressive. Good job, Rohit. Hopefully he's watching this recording later. So that's awesome. Next time he's on, we'll certainly welcome him. Something very exciting to me, and I hope very exciting to each of you. So the more that any of you that are on the call are spending time here, using Meshery, contributing to Meshery, or just talking about Meshery. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to be involved in the community. Any of those things, all of those things are so very welcomed. So, and that this next item here is about Forrester. If you don't know who Forrester is, it's a company it's an analyst firm. It's similar to Gartner or 451 Research, or there are a couple of others. Forrester reached out, or VP of Research reached out last weekend to clarify some facts about Meshery. Reason being is because he's going to include it in an upcoming report on service meshes. So I take that as a massive, or I have to say I giggled a fair bit when that happened. It was very nice. Each of you should be very proud of it when it comes out. I'm going to make sure that each of you have got a copy of it. I don't know how much it will cover Meshery, but it will cover Meshery some, and Meshery will be included in the report. So it's fantastic. I'm very excited about that. One, just the fact that he even knew about.
Congrats, Lee.
Yeah, really, it's congratulations to all of you. It's seriously the fact that he even knew about it. Moreover, the fact that he considers that it's happening enough, that it's an important enough project to include in that paper. I mean, in those reports, companies will pay $25,000 for a copy of the report. I mean, that they'll pay. It's ridiculous, and the thing is it's about what you guys are doing, you know. So the more that you go out and talk about it, or use it, or provide feedback, or whatever, it's just so awesome. So that's very cool. Very cool. Next one up. I know I talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It hasn't established just yet, but I consider that it's very relevant and important to Meshery. The project is that we're creating a new special interest group in the CNCF. It's about projects that are about networking and about traffic, and service mesh related things are very much so about traffic. Many of you might be familiar with Matt Klein. He's at Lyft. He's on the CNCF Technical Oversight Committee. He's also kind of the guy behind Envoy. And Envoy is the service proxy, the data plane component that many of the service meshes use. And so Matt has been on me about getting this created because he wants for us to go and do some good work within here. This special interest group will govern network service mesh, Linkerd, so 2 proxies. It'll also govern Envoy, CNI, Core DNS, and any network-related projects within the CNCF, so that's awesome. Maybe it would govern etcd being focused on service discovery. I think Matt and I are having a discussion about where that should go. Point being is that all things going well, I'll probably be chairing the SIG, and ultimately my desire is for Meshery to go in to be reviewed inside that SIG and probably land inside the CNCF. And I got to tell you that the CNC being to the extent that any of you are affiliated, hopefully that would just be another major win for all of you that are participating in the project. More than plenty opportunities to talk about the project and present it, not only after it were to get adopted into the CNCF, but well in advance. So by the way, if anyone wants to write about Meshery or speak at a conference about Meshery, let me know. I get asked to go speak many more times than I possibly can. I'd love to see one of you up on stage and not me. So speaking of being up on stage, just a brief update. I was in Austria last weekend and shared Meshery with a collection of about 30 students. We went through 3 or 4 hours of workshop training on Istio. Meshery was well received. I'm hoping that a couple of those folks might join this call. I'll be out in Guadalajara tomorrow and Sunday presenting a brutal 6-hour workshop on Istio. Meshery will be a part of that as well. So that's excellent. And then in a couple of weeks, Garish will be in Montreal presenting a 4-hour workshop wherein Meshery will be used again. And so this is great. I mean, in some respects, it's this type of activity that helps with companies like Forrester becoming aware of the project. So good. All right, we're almost done with the announcements. I want to get it. Harshini's got some stuff to share. I'm excited about. We've got some other things to share. So just quick, for those of you who live inside the Twitterverse, we announced this a couple of weeks ago. There is a new Twitter account, Meshery.io. This is separate from the Layer 5 account because we're sort of getting Meshery as a project segregated and prepared for potential pushing into the CNCF. And so Go out there, and I think I'd said before, if it's not following you and you're here on this call, then it should be following you, because I want people to know that, I want people who use this project to know who's helping the project go forth. And so I know it's not following some of you, because there's only 9 here, so let's get that changed. Lastly, I would say one of the prerequisites to Meshery going into the CNCF is that the project itself needs to have, for better or worse, a certain number of stars on its GitHub repository. I think most of you on this call have starred the project. Yesterday there were, 2 days ago there were, yesterday there were 73 stars. How do I know that? Because I check it about every 3 hours. Because it's one of those signals that people use. So in the last 4 hours, this individual started the repository. That is fantastic. Thank you, Eric, whoever Eric is. My point is, if you haven't started this, you're compelled to go start. You must go start. Okay, and that actually goes, it not just goes for the Meshery repository, but really for the rest of the repositories in the layer 5 org, so just each of the adapters and things. Certainly the Meshery one is going to be the highest start, and the one that people are going to pay the most attention to, but it's arguably a very silly metric, but it is, again, just the metric that is used to meet certain criteria. So I'll actually, let me say this too on the stars. The reason that the stars are also important is anyone familiar with the Linux, the Linux Foundation's community bridge? I bet none of you are, and that's fine, unless I've shown this in the meeting before, and then you would know. Some of you might be familiar with Patron, or I forget some of the other ones, where basically if you're an open source project contributor and you'd like for someone to buy you a coffee or give you a few bucks, they can fund you, right? They can send you something through PayPal or through Patreon or through Community Bridge. Community Bridge is new as of about 6 months ago. It's created by the Linux Foundation. Projects like Meshery can be entered into this organization, Community Bridge, and once the project is in here, and as a matter of fact, we'll just bring it up, you can see there are a number of projects that are inside of Community Bridge today. Organizations, corporate organizations, can come in and pay for development against the project. So I guess what I'm saying is, there's a prerequisite number of stars that a project has to have to be listed inside Community Bridge. Once it is, the project can begin to receive funding from anyone who wants to begin to pay for it. And what I'm trying to incentivize you guys to think about is that there's a potential flow of funding to you to work on the project once it gets in here. And I think the bar here is, it might be 200 stars. I have to go look. Certainly ping me if that's of interest and you want me to follow up, but our intention would be to bring it there as well. So good. Okay, by the way, Nupur is on the call. So Nupur, thank you so much for coming. I think it's your first time on the call as well. So just very, very happy you're here. Very, very pleased. Okay, I'm about to shut up so other people can talk. Next week, Kieran Smith, he said he would go ahead and present one of the issues that he'd been working on, which is a new brew formula for Meshery CTL. Brew being homebrew. For Mac users, you might be familiar with that package management system. It's good. Okay, Also, certainly this last week, we had a discussion with the mesh team. Did everyone see the announcement that Continuous announced? They announced a new type of service mesh. Consequently, there's a new job for Meshery, right, to go interface with this service mesh and help manage it as well. So we did meet with the maintainers of that project, and Daniel in specific is more or less signing up to help create a new adapter for mesh. And even though it looks like it's enunciated mesh, it's just pronounced mesh, which is really confusing. But that's good news as well. I think we already talked about the fact that we're looking to further our collaboration on some open specs. Let's not go into that now. Okay, good. So those are kind of the general announcements. Garish, do you want to talk through a few of the rest of these, and then we can talk about the NSM adapter? As Garish hunts for his mute button. There it is.
So I'm sorry. Well, what did you want to talk about, Lee?
Yep. So I'm going to shut up because everybody's sick of hearing my voice. It's time for you to. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. No, actually, so the first part there, I've already presented it in the previous week's call, but I sure can actually take them through, this process.
Well, or if we could, maybe since you've already gone over it, let's save it because I could take up the rest of the time. But maybe start here if you would.
Sounds good. So one of the recent things that happened this week, we were actually experimenting a few things, and one of the interesting things is actually complete automation with CI. If for people who attended last week's call, they probably know that last week I actually showed them the CI process using GitHub Actions. And many of the folks Sako and Pavan who were there last week were very excited about it. But that was actually what I call a semi-automated release process because it would do a Docker build, it would do a binary release of Meshery CTL, etc. But then there was still this extra step where we will have to go and manually tag a particular commit on the master branch for the release to actually start. So we actually investigated that and we tried to go towards complete automation, but we did hit some limitations, so we are deciding not to go with it. The other thing we did this week is actually the testing with LinkedIn for authentication. So I'm pretty sure everybody here would have seen this login page. Sorry, I was just talking about the other one until I bring this up. So I'm pretty sure people have used either Twitter, GitHub, Google up until now. Starting today, we are actually we're bringing in the authentication with LinkedIn. The flow is not going to be any different. So if you guys have already used Meshery from your local, you would have actually seen the exact process. I mean, there's no difference. The only thing is this just brings us an extra authentication route, using LinkedIn to actually authenticate. So people who don't have a GitHub, Twitter, Google can definitely use LinkedIn. That's pretty much my demo on this one. So it's as simple as that. Integration was pretty smooth, but that's pretty much that one update. I'll give the ball to probably someone else who would want to present towards the end of the call if there is time. I can again walk you guys through the GitHub Actions process we have in place, which I'm pretty sure it will be exciting for some of the people who missed last week's call.
Okay. Any comments on the LinkedIn auth? Has anyone ever had any issues with authenticating and being redirected back to your local Meshery interface?
In the early stages, I think at some point I got some issues that it would authenticate me, and then I would go back to the website of Meshery directly instead of going to the localhost. But that didn't happen since like maybe 1 month now or something like that.
Okay. 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 Next topic was NSM adapter. So Harshini's been working on this. Harshini, do you want to provide an update? Just to talk about where you're at?
So I have created it, and I tried to deploy it, and it was deploying, but had certain issues with the micro K cluster, so that I was not able to deploy it.
Okay, so you've created a beta version of the adapter. Its current functionality is that it will provision network service mesh. It will provision NSM.
Yes.
Okay, and then I missed the last part of what you were saying. Were you saying that I know that you're still working on bringing functionality to deploy a sample application, and that's okay. But did you say that you had another issue?
Yeah, so that was like when I tried to create a micro K cluster and give the config to the Meshery. So there was some error.
Oh, I see. Okay. Huh. And were you using the NSM adapter to create the micro-K8s cluster? Or were you, did you had the micro-K8s cluster running separately, and then when you tried to provision NSM to it, you ran into issues?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah. Okay, very good. You think it's anything that we can quickly troubleshoot on the call, or is it a bit more involved?
Okay.
Okay. And then when you deployed NSM, are you doing that using Helm?
Yes, I did it through that.
Nice. Okay. Did you end up using Helm's Go client to do that?
Not exactly the Helm Go client, but kind of Helm packages, not the Helm client.
Okay, got it. Using Helm, like Helm YAML packages. Are you executing Helm as a binary, like as a call out to Helm to do like a Helm install, or are you just taking the YAML packages and using the Kubernetes Go client to do it?
I use the Kubernetes Go client. So after getting the YAML to doing that.
Got it. Okay. Cool. Cool. Very good. Okay. I think it kind of depends on who else we have on the call in terms of other things to chat through. So does anyone have topics that they want to bring up? Yes. So very good. So we've got very good. We've got Mr. Porla and Fanji on the call. Good, good, good. There is one thing maybe that I would bring up because I know it has stung a few of you or kind of stumbled a few of you, and that is with respect to the Developer Certificate of Origin, or DCO. So I'll bring up just an example pull request that the pull request is made, and based on the new CI process that we're using with GitHub Actions, we'll execute a number of code of checks, most of which right now will fail, and that is to be expected. That's just sort of a state, a representation of the state of where we are in the project. Some of them will pass, and some of them are very important to pass, like the ability to actually build the code. And if it isn't building, then maybe we shouldn't accept the PR. But there's one that is a small item and takes just a little bit of initial setup, and then it mostly is something that you can forget about. I know many of you have already come to understand what DCO is and what it stands for and kind of how to deal with it. But there's about 4 of us or more that I think are just coming to recognize what this is and why it is that the project is asking for this. So let's talk about it for a moment. So most of us, probably, if you're like, many open source contributors will go and start to engage on a project. Like you can see, actually, FluentD is the one right here. That's a great project. We've contributed to it before. Same thing for Envoy right here. That those projects are under a particular license, open source license. Meshery and all of the repositories under layer 5 are licensed as Apache v2. Apache v2 is a friendly license. It's very prominently used across projects, certainly within the CNCF. It's essentially the license that's mandated there, and so works well. It's Kubernetes is using it, FluentD, Prometheus, Envoy, Docker, Moby. It's great, and so that's why Meshery is using it as well. Part of what each of these projects also enforce, if you've ever contributed to Istio or to Kubernetes, for example, or to many other projects, you may have had to work through a CLA, a certificate license agreement, and you might have interfaced with a CLA bot. A contributor license agreement is not dissimilar from a developer certificate of origin. They're both trying to accomplish similar things. Meshery is using a developer certificate of origin, and so do these other popular projects. We're using it to protect you and protect the project. All that really is happening here is that every time that you make a commit, I don't know if you can read the screen, it's kind of small. Every time you make a commit, you will have signed off your commit. So right here it just says signed off by this person with this email address. And all that really means is that you're just confirming that the pull request, the commits that you're making came from you. And so you're signing your work, like, hey, this was my work. Part of signing that work says, this is my work, and I didn't copy it from, verbatim from somewhere else. Like I'm not taking it from a different project or a different product and then pushing it over here. And so you're just signing it. And so you don't actually have to, you obviously don't physically, literally sign it. All you need to do is configure your Git client or your IDE to automatically sign off, to just add this signature every time that you do a commit. And that will protect you and it'll protect the project, and it's kind of required as the project goes forth. And so when someone does a commit and a pull request, you may see that this particular check fails. This is the developer certificate of origin. In order to, if that happens to you, it's not a big deal. There's 2 things to do. One,
Hey, I'm sorry, are you sharing the screen?
oh, I thought I was. Oh, thanks for interrupting.
Yeah.
I love it when that's funny. Yeah, interrupt me more quickly next time. So,
Yeah, sure.
yeah, no, thanks so I thought that I was sort of sharing here. I thought that I was sharing this earlier. Send this in the chat. So we're using this little bot to help us make sure that everybody's signing their commits. You can see some of the very prominent popular open source projects that are using it. I was just showing an example of a pull request where there are many checks that are going on inside the pull request. And one of them that happens is this developer certificate of origin. In this case, this particular commit wasn't signed off on, and so that'll be an issue. To fix it as a one-time thing, Rohit, in this case, can click on details, and it will tell him, here's the 2 commands that you need to run to sign off on your commit, like to fix the issue. It's very simple to do, and he can go get it fixed. But ongoing, he'll want to, and everyone will want to probably make some change, to either change your practices about how you type out git commit and things, or just make an alias. Just configure if you're using Visual Studio, for example, as your development environment, you can tell Visual Studio to always sign your commits so that it's just happening in the background and you don't even notice it. Instructions on how to do that on those 2 ways are provided in the contributing guide. There's a bit that explains about the developer certificate of origin, what it is, why we have it, how to ensure that you are signing off when you're doing a git commit, or how to just alias the git commit command to always include a -s so that you're always signing off. Now, actually, since Nupur is on the call, I'm going to highlight some work that I'm hoping that she'll be doing. She's going to enhance and so Nupur, I'm going to speak on your behalf because I hope that you do this, but you'll end up enhancing the contributing guide to include like this screenshot. This is just a screenshot of Visual Studio Code that says like, here's how you can go make sure that Visual Studio Code just always signs off on your commits, so you don't even have to worry about it and think about it. Who has questions on this and stuff? I know that about 4 or 5 of us have been hitting this issue. So what it is and how to automatically sign your commits. So Nupur, I don't know if you're in a location where you can talk, but yeah, if you can, I'd love to hear you speak to that issue, and if that makes sense or not. You might not be in a place where you can talk, so I do see your chat message though, so that's good. Good, okay, all right. I wanted to take some time to talk about that because it's just one of those things I think is, yeah, got it. Thank you, Nupur, understood. It's just one of those issues that plagues a lot of folks, so. Okay, so we have 10 minutes left. Who's got things they want to talk about? Could be anything, could be things on the project, could be the fact that this week 2 new service meshes were announced, one from Kong, one from Continuous. They're keeping us busy with new adapters.
Hey, hi. Actually, I was facing some problem while doing the previous issue of Meshery CTF. So there is a problem. You pointed out that we should use not Meshery command in the Meshery under Meshery CTL code. So using start cmd.run will do the work. But when I was doing that, it was falling into a loop, and it was not executing. It was saying it's calling the function, and the function is calling itself. So it's making a recursive loop. So I thought maybe creating a new command of restart in Messery CTL will help. So I thought I should ask Girish first. That's what I was thinking to ask
Yeah.
about the call.
Yeah, interesting. So is it? Yeah, where were you finding the recursion happening? In the start command or in the init command?
In the start command. I was working on start command.
Yeah. Okay. So a restart, you're thinking. Yeah, and the restart, if there is a restart command, it could simply just call the stop command, and then when that's done, it could call the start command. Like
Yes.
certainly, restart, I think, is a familiar argument for anyone who's been used to running Linux processes and managing Linux processes, or like either restart or reload.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that. If anybody else have an opinion on whether the usefulness of a command like that, restart.
Sure. I mean, it wouldn't hurt. If we want to have a restart, like, it will be a kind of combination of like the stop and start. But I mean, like, for convenience, like, rather than typing it twice, sure.
So that makes some sense to me. I think the need for it maybe makes me slightly concerned. Is that to think, Anand, the bit that you're working on is that if Meshery, the container, attempts to start but fails, I think you're building in some resiliency to see if it failed, and if it did, try to start it again. And then it's sort of in that, and that's the purpose for what you're doing, right? That's why you're running into this issue about.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So. Yeah.
The other is that we can remove the restart thing. Like if it fails, then it will show the logs directly. It can be that.
Right. But I wonder. Okay, that makes sense. But I wonder if we wouldn't be better suited to have Docker do that for us. Like to the extent that we can configure things like a restart policies and leverage Docker's intelligence and its capabilities to do those things on our behalf, because we start to get in. Because we should ideally rely on the system that's running those containers and have that system deal with it. Anand, I'm not sure if you've had a chance to familiarize with. I guess I realize I'm not sharing my screen again. I don't know if you've had a chance to familiarize with things like this. Docker provides restart policies, and it may be kind of an addition to our Docker Compose YAML, or to the Docker file itself.
Yeah, the Docker Compose restart policy fails to stop.
Okay. Oh, thank you, Nuno. Let's see you soon. Thanks for coming. Big expectations for you, Nuno. So, okay. Yeah. So Anand, I popped a link to the restart policies into the chat? Maybe it's a safer path for us to go there and try that out.
So I will change the code to directly if it fails and because Docker will do the word restart.
Ooh. Can you say it one more time, Anand? Maybe a little bit louder.
I was saying that I will change the code to directly show the logs if the container fails to start, and Docker will do the restart policy of itself.
That makes sense to me. Yeah, and I think on this particular issue, it may be one of those things that we're only able to take it so far inside of Meshery CTL that, like, if it is failing to start, maybe it was a fluke the first time, and if it tries to restart, if it fails again, it's probably that, like, something's broken. Their environment doesn't have enough disk space. They're running out of memory. Meshery itself is broken. You know, and so probably we're not going to be able to account for all those use cases, and we would just, I think, doing what you said, it makes perfect sense, like just informing the user, making the issue known to the user so that they can address it. Nice. All right, who's got other things? Who's got?
I was checking the Kong's Kuma. I don't know if you have a look.
Yeah.
And they have also summit in October 2-3 here in SF.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't know that they have an upcoming event.
Yeah, I can post it. So it's really interesting because they were made purely in Nginx. Now they are more change the direction to Envoy. That's
Yeah. Well, that's surprise, I guess. You know.
yeah, I think because all of the service meshes, they don't have really distinctive differentiation. If they come up with Nginx, I think it could be interesting that they have also experience with all.
Yeah.
So, but they followed the market, I guess.
I think there's some truth to what you're saying about the extensibility of Nginx. Its Lua scripting capability, all of the plugins and other things that people have written for it. It's a bit more open, I believe, than Envoy. And in some respects, part of the reason why Envoy had beaten out Nginx in this cloud native ecosystem, some of those challenges, I think Nginx is starting to come around. One of those had been about how the process itself, like Envoy as a process or Nginx as a process, hot reloads, and Nginx wasn't handling it as well as Envoy was.
Oh yeah, that's in open source one.
Oh, got it.
Yeah, AWS and they used Nginx open source, but then they added on top of it that's supported. So I guess I'm not sure if they had added it, but yeah, that could be extended.
Right. I think that there's some interesting things to do with Nginx as the or some ways to differentiate, to your point, instead of Envoy. But
yeah, it could be just their differentiation point if they could go just because there are a lot of people using Nginx already, so it was kind of could be easier to go maybe.
Nice.
But
well, I guess this means that we're going to need to do a Kuma adapter soon.
yep. So
okay, we're just a minute over the hour. I don't want to hold anyone past. So, anybody have anything else burning that they need to bring up? Nice. Okay. Well, I guess I'll say hasta la vista since I'm headed to Guadalajara tomorrow. So.
Hey, Lee, I was saying that just message that it's decompiled the MesseCTL and it was working good for interpreter.
Got it.
It was
Okay.
using Docker desktop. And it was good. So,
Got it. Okay. That's why that would have been missed. Yeah. Just that. Yeah. You wouldn't have seen it. Yeah. Okay. Makes sense. Okay. It's not entirely your fault then. We'll just ship you a Mac. Did you want a 13-inch or a 15-inch Mac Pro?
I will have another.
Okay. Oh, very good. Thanks everybody for joining this week. It's been great. Same time next week.
Thank you.
All right.
Bye-bye.
See you guys.
See you guys.
Bye.